Doom Eternal is coming out on the 20th of March 2020, the same day as Animal Crossing. I've been seeing people making memes saying, haha, I wonder which one people will buy, but I'm just gonna try and buy both. I will have genuinely no money, but I'll try. I'm probably more excited for Doom Eternal because I'm not a fucking baby who plays baby games, but pretending you can afford nice clothes and furniture is like the only fantasy fulfillment I actually like. That's not even a joke, I like being able to move furniture around without...
Oh, shit.
The main reason I'm really excited is because Doom 4 is like really good. I know, no one said that before, look at me. But I don't mean this from the way of like, Doom is good because it's fast, unlike modern shooters which are shit because they're not fast. I mean this in the way like, Doom 4 has a great understanding of classic shooters and brought them back not just by directly translating its elements, but updating them for Doom 4. And since Doom Eternal's coming out, I'll probably never play this game again, so I guess I should make a video on it now, especially since it's way better than what we could have got, because Doom 4 was originally Doom 4. It's kinda hard for me to get information on this due to John Carmack being within a 10-mile radius. It's the same problem as Quake 2 where I look through interviews and it's a blur of like,
we're gonna use
He did say that the game runs at 30 FPS because you can't have 30 guys crawling all over you at 60 frames per second at this graphics technology level because it's painful. Yeah, okay, John. It's like he speaks in riddles. There is footage of it which shows that the game looked really similar to Rage, which isn't great, but then there's concept art which looks worse than Rage. Like, it's so bland. I can't really tell whether this would have been good or not. It's usually impossible to tell with cancelled games, but I can tell you without a doubt that this would have been received terribly at the time, considering especially how sick people were of market trends ruining every FPS. The concept art is so lacking in personality, it genuinely looks like a Call of Duty game or a game made by John Carmack. Why am I being so mean to him? I like him. But for the exact reason of it looks shit, Doom's development was restarted and turned into what we have now. The story of Doom is kind of fun and self-aware, but not in a... yeah. The story actually has lots of lore surrounding it that I've heard people get into and enjoy. I haven't. I can't read articles on fake shotguns, that's... But there is actually useful and interesting lore connecting to the UAC and the characters, and it works well by fleshing out the story for those who care about it. I don't really, but there's still an appeal here in that the concept of Doom Guy is really funny. He doesn't discuss with any of the characters or reason or anything, he just constantly barges through life, actively getting in the way of his own goals, and it's great, I feel kind of represented. The story is great because Doom Guy is funny and I can ignore it. That's all I need. The game's presented really well too. The designs from Doom have been changed to make them more modern and they work really well. Some of them haven't been changed much. Lost Souls are flying skulls to be fair, but some of them have been changed in a way that's drastic but still looks really good. Since there's more details, they make more sense biologically. Like, there's consistently parts of them with flesh appearing under like a natural armour, and it feels like you can see where you're hitting them. In fact, with some of the more bulky enemies, this works as a weak point, like the Pinky Demon, whose back is just more exposed skin. While I'm mentioning gameplay stuff as well, I like how the imps were changed to make them look smaller and more agile since they are weaker enemies. The taller, tougher design in the original worked alright because of the way they were placed, but here the smaller design is much better. And being able to see how they physically work rather than just having them as a blur of pixels gives them this kind of gross, hellish feeling which I really liked. Apart from the Revenant and Mancubus who have guns. How did they get those? Who gave them to them? Admittedly, effort has been put into making the Mancubus's weapon look like an actual part of them, but why does it look like a gaming keyboard? This modernisation worked in the level design as well. Some of these levels really stand out, like the introduction of the Titan's Realm, the slow degradation of Argent D'Nur, and the concentrated lighting of the Foundry, and also the other levels which kind of blend in together. A problem the graphics have is that a lot of it looks really samey. A thing I've noticed with Doom is that it has a fairly limited colour palette, which can be good, but Doom goes a little overboard, just kind of looking like A thing that's consistent with the levels I mentioned as positives is that they each have a very focused and harsh colour palette. Titan's Realm is coated in incredibly dark tones, everything surrounding you feels covered in ash. Argent D'Nur has a contrast of black and red that gets more noticeable as the level progresses, and the Foundry has a lot of light coming from the massive fire below the level. Doom's levels are at their best when they know how to give the image a clear contrast and how they want to play with lighting, but they often don't do that and it ends up as this orange blur of hell or an industrial setting. The sameness isn't helped by the fact that those are the two settings as well. It's either industrial or hell, and I wish there was more. The hell stuff looks really cool to be fair, but the industrial stuff is kind of boring-ish. I played a game called A Plague Tale Innocence, which I really liked the visuals for that game because the horror stuff felt weaved into a 1300 setting. It wasn't a horror stuff or a 1300 setting, it was a 1300 setting which had been corrupted and twisted, and I feel like Doom could have done something similar. Hell has crossed into Mars, it feels like something cool could be done with that. They do put hellish things around, blood, fires, spilled coffee, pentagrams, or hexagrams. They're like the opposites, I should know which one is which, but I don't. It looks hellish, but more like a science lab with Halloween decorations rather than a corrupted land. That's what I wrote, that's very edgy. They make it more orange, but why is this game so orange? Why? In fact, the overwhelming use of orange also makes it kind of hard to finish. This is a problem I have with games like the original Doom, but Doom 4 uses design techniques to keep you engaged, like quiet time and short-term and long-term goals and stuff, but this sort of stuff isn't as effective because everything just looks the same. I like the way this game looks, parts of it are really striking, it's just some parts are dull and like a lot of it looks the same. There's effort clearly put in, but there's still room for more. This is a critique after all. It's not a critique, I'm not smart enough to call my videos critiques. Who cares about any of this though? A surprising amount of people, but if you look at reviews or descriptions of the game, they all say it's fast and fun, just like the old Dooms. They all say that, every review I've seen uses the word fast. And they're not wrong, Doom goes all out in being an old school shooter. There's similar level designs, similar health systems, and similar combat. On the surface, it plays the exact same as the original Doom. You search for a maze-like level for an exit, fighting demons along the way. That is Doom. Obviously 3D changes things, and it ends up playing more like a combination of Quake and Doom, with the verticality of Quake, but enemy designs from Doom and the weapon mods of Quake 4. The greatest game ever made. This means it works great as an old school shooter, but earlier I mentioned something about it adapting, and it does just that in multiple areas, most notably in combat. Doom's combat has been twisted into something much more focused and less flimsy, and the most obvious area of this is the movement. Despite everyone saying how fast this game is, it's actually slower than something like Quake. You still move quickly, but tricks like bunny hopping don't get you to insane speeds, you just move at a steady speed. Compare Doom's movement here to movement in, say, Dusk, and then compare that to Dusk when you freak out and start jumping everywhere. This might seem like a bad thing, but I think for a campaign like this, which could be introducing faster paced shooters to many people, it works much better. Even after playing tons of games like these, Dusk's movement can feel a bit unrelatable. You jump around at such an insane speed, it can't help but feel like slightly, gamey. And I like Dusk's movement, it's just here, I feel a slightly slower but still quick feeling movement is needed. The other obvious place where changes are integrated is in the glory kills. There's this one shooter I played which I find is kind of overlooked quite often. It's Counter-Strike Condition Zero Deleted Scenes, and I'm really glad it's overlooked because it's fucking shit. It's Counter-Strike's mechanics pushed into a Call of Duty style campaign, and it made me hate health meters so much. Generally in Counter-Strike you won't fight more than a few enemies in a life, but this game throws tons of enemies at you, so since I'm bad, I constantly got stuck in loops of death. This is what I always fear with health meters, and why I disagree with people saying they're always the best option. Both health meters and health regeneration have their uses. Generally, you're saying whether you want the player to dodge damage altogether, or just reduce it. Doom, however, has a very clear idea that it wanted to make you seem powerful. Cowering away from health pickups wouldn't work, and so Doom instead uses glory kills to keep the combat constant. If you take damage, there aren't too many health pickups, so hiding will likely end in death. Instead, you have to charge at enemies and get them into a stunned state to get health off them. This adds a whole extra layer of tacticism to the typical old school style shooting. I had to Google if tacticism is a real word, by the way. I'm enough of a twat to use these big words, but I'm not smart enough to know if they are actually real words. Because you have to decide how you're going to recover health. You have two versions of each weapon, with one being more powerful than the other, so you try to reduce an enemy's health with the weaker one to get a glory kill, or you use the more powerful one to outright kill them. And then on top of that, larger enemies will give you more health through glory kills. You'll have to decide how you want to use power-ups. On Nightmare, this is incredible because I was constantly on the verge of death, trying to pull myself back up quick enough, and I only finished the game on this difficulty because of the glory kills. The original Doom is miserable on Nightmare, but having a way to recover makes it feel like you're fighting and pushing forward, rather than waiting for the enemies to get tired. The new stuff like this pretty much makes this game into its own new thing. However, there's also progression systems. Between the start and end of Doom, it's supposed to make you go from the Doom guy to the Doom Slayer, but it's more you go from immediately dying to explosive barrels to not immediately dying from explosive barrels. The secrets are included again in this game, and some of these are really cool. The hidden classic levels, the hidden weapons that allow you to sequence break, the weapon mods, these little figures which are really overpriced in real life. The art book costs less than just one of these. These secrets are really fun to find. The weapon and armor tokens, which are thrown all over you, aren't so fun to find, along with the rune trials, which are fun to do. It's like those little Alfheim things in Bayonetta, but once you get them you can upgrade them by doing an often very specific task many times. And this isn't terrible, but I just don't know if any of these extra features are really needed at all. I don't know why this is here. The reason I found for interviews and stuff was customization, but some of these upgrades are just objectively better. So you start out with weaker upgrades and get more powerful upgrades as you go on. That's not really customization. It is progression, to be fair, but it's not something to push you forward really. The game just gets a bit easier. That's not something to strive for. It gives the game that problem Wolfenstein: The New Order had, where you feel pushed into a specific strange way of playing. And like Wolfenstein, you can ignore these challenges, but I'm sure there's a bunch of players who just felt compelled to play this way even if they didn't like it. It's not a huge problem, it's just kind of weird because it's the rest of the game has this very focused and old school design, and then there's this other upgrade system that's just kind of here and feels a bit unnecessary. Same with the equipment to a degree, it feels out of place. You have grenades and stuff, but the grenades are really weak, and what even is that? Maybe the codex says? I don't know. The Siphon grenade was designed to work with the Doom Marine's Praetor suit, specifically to make use of the Argent receptors found in the gloves and chest plates. The grenade has 3 stages. When primed, the grenade releases a positively charged particle field around itself and the operator's hand. Then, when the grenade is released and explodes, it releases a negatively charged particle field over a distance of a few meters. The negatively charged particles attract Argent plasma from any demon caught in the radius, tearing the plasma from their cells. Finally, the positively charged Praetor suit then attracts the negatively charged Argent cloud and gathers the plasma. This siphons energy back into the suit, partially healing the Doom Marine. That's the tutorial there. It's at the end of the fucking description. But yeah. I don't really know what else to say. I could mention multiplayer and snap maps. Multiplayer is kind of shit because of it feeling like a fairly standard multiplayer for Doom. People were expecting Quake, but as I said, Doom's movement is a lot more held back, so it doesn't really work, and loadouts don't help. It's not awful, it works, but it's a bit bland and unbalanced. Snap maps is alright. I don't think these level creators really attract an audience when used on 3D games, since those are way harder to design levels for. Like 2D games you can get pretty easily, but with the effort for 3D it's like, you feel like you could just learn to use Unity or something. It's weird. It ends up that a lot of these levels here are recreations of other games, or weirdly overly ambitious levels, probably made by like 13-year-olds. I think it's got a kind of charm to it, but it's definitely not for everyone. Apart from that, I mean, yeah, this is kind of weird for me because I don't want to mess this video up. Doom is a game I like quite a lot, and I've put a decent amount of time into the Steam version alone, never mind the PS4 version or the kind of rubbish VR version that probably doesn't have a lot of time into it actually. I'm at a place with this game where I've beaten it multiple times, and like I've beaten it on the hardest difficulty and everything, and I keep going back to it, and I have no idea why. It's really hard to specify why Doom in particular is so good. And after staring at this document for a while, I think it's because it brought back an FPS style people love into the mainstream, while acknowledging how game design has evolved since then. But yeah, it is Quake. I've already talked about Quake and what makes Quake good, and what makes Doom good is what makes Quake good, along with the modern elements I talked about. Doom 4 is really good. Every element of it makes it feel like a bigger version of the original, even down to the soundtrack. It's probably the most fun of its FPS games, and it's allowed other games to play with its mechanics, creating great games like Dusk, Amityville, Maximum Action, and other games not made by New Blood Interactive. And I guess that kind of makes it the perfect Doom reboot, because that's exactly what the original Doom did. It stood on its own really well, whilst also allowing other games to build themselves off of it. These are genuine parallels, like Wolfenstein was even the weird one before it people forget about. And Titanfall 2 is Blake Stone. These are... I don't know how this happens. Anyway, that's Doom, I guess. I'm really excited for Doom Eternal, and I've gotten myself all hyped up with this video. And now, I just kinda have to wait a few weeks from when this is recording. I'm probably gonna release this on like the 20th. But, yeah, until then, I don't know. I'll just like, sleep, I guess.
I don't think I'll ever live to see a prophet. I don't want to be a locket clinging to a chest till the last breath.